Welcome back to FURYCAST. But first, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and of course, smash the bell for notifications. And don't forget to sign up to the mailing list for my new graphic novel, illustrated by the world famous Ebi Canales. Sign up now. The link is in the description. He started in Kung Fu in the early 90s, reaching the rank of 5th degree black sash. Since then, he's trained in Jeet Kune-Do, Filipino Kali, Muay Thai, and submission wrestling. He also recently reached the rank of brown belt under the legendary coach Eric Paulson. Today on FURYCAST, I welcome my friend Victor Young. What's going on, Victor?
How's it going?
Pretty good, man. We met last year at the CSW coaches camp in Fullerton. Got to know you a little bit. I did see on social media you just got your brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so congratulations on that, man.
Thank you. That was awesome. Yeah.
It feels good, right?
Yes, it does. Absolutely. Especially if it's under Sensei Eric Paulson. Especially.
Absolutely. And we'll get into Sensei Eric a little bit later. Always, if anybody who's connected with CSW, always ask them Eric Paulson stories if you have one, or it could just be about training or whatnot. But let's get into your personal journey in the martial arts and in life. Tell me where you grew up, what that was like, and how you got into the martial arts.
Yeah, so I primarily grew up as a child in Japan. Actually, my dad was in the military, so we moved to and my mom's Japanese, so I'm actually half Japanese, but we moved to Japan in I think 1984. So I was 4 years old, and I lived in Japan until I was 12. So a lot of my just a lot of my upbringing, understanding of just cultures and life and stuff, a lot of it happened in Japan. Even though obviously I'm American and primarily I lived on base in Japan, but I did live off base as well. My mom's Japanese, so a lot of just my childhood, and even though I wasn't really a teenager in Japan, but just a lot of my upbringing, being able to run free in Japan, kind of really influenced the way I look at life and just how life is in general for me.
Now, you moved to Japan when you said you were 4. Where'd you move from?
We were living in Hawaii.
Wow.
Yeah.
From one awesome destination to another awesome destination, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. As far, obviously when we lived in Hawaii, I think it was from the time I was like 2 until we left. I do remember Hawaii. So yeah, Hawaii is kind of where I originally remember, having memories. And then shortly after that, we moved to Japan.
Is your dad Hawaiian?
No, my dad is black.
Yeah, he's black. Okay.
Yeah, he was in the Navy, so he was stationed in Hawaii.
Okay, awesome. Where was he from?
He's originally from Mississippi.
Mississippi. Okay, yeah. Down south. I'm here in Houston.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so how'd you end up in Washington State?
So, my mom's Japanese, and she, we obviously, when my dad was retiring and his last station was in Sasebo, Japan, and my mom either wanted to move to Seattle, or at least close to Seattle, or San Francisco, just so we could still have some awesome food and stuff. So that's what they ultimately decided to for my dad to retire and come to Seattle or Washington State.
Yeah, man, it's beautiful. It's that area. I know we met out in Fullerton, but I have friends, and I've spent some time in the Pacific Northwest, a little bit north of you in the Skagit County area.
Okay.
A significant, period of time, and love the people, love the weather. Of course, the weather is really awesome for about 4 months out of the year.
Yeah.
But it's probably one of Washington State. When I go there, I always feel at home. I'm not from that area, but when I get off that plane and I'm in Seattle and taking the drive up to up north, it gives me this sense of peace when I'm out there. Do you have that same feeling? Or
I think it's one thing you kind of you hit the nail right on spot is it's very beautiful, and despite what people think about Seattle and all the rain, especially in the summertime. In the summertime, it doesn't rain at all.
At all, yeah.
It doesn't get dark till 9:30 at night, so it's very beautiful. Like, in the South, it's like green is not really green, right? Like it's a little bit more brown with the trees and everything. But in Seattle, when I used to visit my uncle in Mississippi every summer, and I had a lot of family down there, so I always wanted to go down. But when I come back home in late August or September, it's just how green everything is, and
Yeah.
how just like as far as nature and everything is beautiful.
Yeah, you really can't beat it. I mean, I've been to Ireland and I've been to a few other really beautiful places. And it's really hard to beat the Pacific Northwest at that time of the year when it's just perfect. It's really everybody should check that out. Now, does that influence your training at all? Because this is when the time I spent out there and we trained, and it was starting to get kind of cold. I asked the guys, what you you guys come out and in 14-degree weather, you guys make it to the dojo and train? Do you have
Uh,
is
you
that an
know,
obstacle?
obviously, thankfully we train indoors. So once you get to your location, you're great. But for me personally, I don't really like traveling in the rain. I'll be honest with you. I think Washingtonians are really used to it because I'm not originally from here, but I've lived here most of my life now. You're just getting past, going outside and getting in your car and getting to your location. It's not too bad, but it's a little bit of a deterrent to be out in the pouring rain, or just even most of the time it's just drizzling and it's kind of dark. So, once you get past all that, I think it has to do with your mindset mainly,
Yeah.
but yeah, it could be a little bit of deterrent.
So let's get back to your journey. So your dad retires, you move to the Seattle area. What year was this? Around what year?
1994.
About 1994. And how old were you?
Yeah. So about 14.
About 14 years old.
Yeah.
Okay. And so was that hard acclimating to that new enviirment? Because you have to
Well,
understand.
no, not
Well, let me just
exactly.
say this.
So,
Well, let me say this real
uh,
quick. I don't mean to cut you off.
yeah.
Um, to me, this is the beginning of the movie No Retreat, No Surrender. The kid moves to Seattle, wants to train martial arts. He's in close proximity to the where Bruce Lee is buried. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So to me,
Yeah.
what happened was you met a kid who could break dance, and there was some other kids that wanted to fight you, and you had to learn martial arts. And hopefully, the ghost of Bruce Lee came to teach. Did any of this happen?
No retreat, no surrender. Yes,
Did
good
any of
one.
this happen? Because it had to happen. No.
No, so my inspiration growing up, even way before I even started martial arts, even when I always wanted to do it, but I never really, pursued it, was Jackie Chan.
Mm-hmm.
So when I
He
was
was blowing
about,
up in '94 here in the U.S.
well, so that's the thing. I've known Jackie Chan since like I was 5 years old,
Oh yeah,
maybe
well,
younger.
Cannonball Run is when I first saw Jackie Chan. Was who's
Yeah.
that guy? Then got into his other movies, and that was like 1980. But go ahead.
So, I lived in Japan, and Jackie Chan, most people don't know, he was bigger than Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was bigger than Sylvester Stallone. In the 80s, Jackie Chan was actually the biggest action star in the world because there's way more people in Asia than there is in the United States. So, my mom wasn't really into martial arts, obviously, but she used to have me and my brother watch late night movies. I think around 10, 11 at night in Japan, they would play either American movies or like action movies that like were very, liked by many people. So one day my mom was like, "Hey, dude, we got this. I want you guys to watch this movie. There's this famous guy. His name is Jackie Chan. He's got this kung fu movie." So my original, like, I would say, interest in martial arts came from watching Jackie Chan in Drunken Master, which in Japanese was actually called Drunken Monkey. I think it was on 1984. The movie had already been out before that, but that's my first time I really got interested in martial arts, is watching Jackie Chan and Drunken Master, and just the way he moved. And I know Chuck Norris is a phenomenal martial artist, and and there's a lot of other phenomenal martial artists, but just the way he moved compared to the karate practitioners and stuff, I was always into kung fu. And this was way back in 1984, 85. Fast forward, 10, 12 years, Rumble in the Bronx comes out in the United States, and everybody's like, "Oh, have you seen that guy, Jackie Chan? He's great. He's this new guy." I'm like, "Oh no, I've seen him. He's been around forever." And it
Yeah,
kind of like ignited my desire to train martial arts. Everybody's talking about Jackie Chan. I was like, "Yeah, he's been around forever," and I always liked him. And I took karate when I was 11 or 12 in Japan, but I didn't really enjoy it. And I was also just, being a kid and going off and shooting BB guns and, doing things maybe we shouldn't be doing, instead of being like, uh, you know, in a direction of trying to be great at something like, whether it's martial arts or sports. So when I saw Jackie Chan and Rumble in the Bronx, all my friends were like, "Oh, you seen this guy? This and that." It kind of, made me think about it. I want to do martial arts, and I know I did karate, and I only took it for a couple of weeks. I didn't really enjoy it, but it's because it wasn't what I really wanted to do. So, at the time when I finally decided to do martial arts, I was 18, or 17 and a half. I graduated from high school, but I started school early, so I was about 17 and a half. So I opened the Yellow Pages, and there was a school. I had no understanding what's a good quality martial arts school or not. And it happened to say Grand Champion, International Forums Grand Champion, a lot of accolades, and it was Kung Fu. So I just called the place up. I walked over there, and from there I joined. Luckily, it was a great school. It was kind of off to the races from there. So Kung Fu was my initial start in martial arts in 1998.
And what style was that?
It was Shaolin White Crane, and Shaolin Long Fist, and then also
Hmm.
Yang style Tai Chi Chuan.
Oh yeah, we had Jeff Bolt. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He
Oh
had
yeah,
him.
he's my instructor's classmate. Jeff
Okay,
Boat. Yeah,
yeah.
Jeffrey Boat is he's actually in the Master Dr. Yang Jiming's Long
Hmm.
Fist book.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I think he
same
co-wrote it, I
lineage.
believe, right? Because yeah, he was a big I don't know if he's still here in the Houston area, but same thing. I went down to his school a few times. This was
Oh,
as an
nice.
adult. And I always wanted to, I felt I felt like I owed him to train because I think he was a architect or something by trade. And I went to
Hmm.
the school and one of his students called him. He left his job to come down to meet me. And I was just so broke at the time. I couldn't really afford it. But I
Sure.
always felt like, man, Jeff Bolt left his job. That's a seafood. That's that's what a
Yeah.
seafood was supposed to be. But I believe I read some of the books that he co-authored, the Shaolin Long Fist and White
Yeah.
Crane. So I
It's
am
great.
familiar. I am familiar, but I am interested in the fact that you went the kung fu route, even though your mother's Japanese. How did she feel about that?
She didn't think, she wasn't in the martial arts. I don't think she really thought one way or another. But I just remember when I first started doing martial arts and she thought it was just my hobby. She always told her friends, "Hey, Bigta's doing karate. He's doing karate." I'm like, "No, mom, it's not karate. It's kung fu." She always kind of would dismiss it a little bit. And I don't know if
Mhm.
she was, I just don't think she really had, she didn't care one way or another. She actually ended up taking kung fu and tai chi for a very long
Mm,
time under my instructor, who name is Daifu Jack Jones. He's under Master Young, right? So Dr.
mhm.
Young Jiming, who's Jeffrey Bolt's instructor. So that's crazy that you know them because that's my original lineage is under that lineage. So that's pretty funny.
Oh no, I was into it, man. The thing with me is I grew up super poor and couldn't take anything, so I was that kid that would just read everything. Well, go through magazines, look at pictures, and try to find a place where I could train. And so now I'm definitely familiar with particularly the long fist style and the white
Yeah.
crane style. Um, while I was, I went to a school maybe once or twice just to check it out, but he had a couple guys doing a couple other styles, Eagle style and some other things. So
Sure.
um, I don't know my body type. Well, then again, Sammo Hong, right? So he's a bigger
Yeah.
guy. So, but so tell me about that school. So you started that school, and what
Hmm.
was that like? What was your first class? Do you remember that experience? Were you
My
overwhelmed?
first class, I think they actually at that time, because we're as a school owner, I look at these things differently now, but they had like a 3-class trial. I think I bought like I can't remember the pricing. Let's say it was $100. You got 3 classes, you got the uniform. But when I first walked in, it wasn't the head instructor, it was one of the Sishangs, one of the black belts that taught under the head instructor. They showed me a video of, Shaolin Kung Fu history, the Shaolin Temple. And then, they showed me how to tie my white belt, and they gave me a few basic stances, a few different kicks, and some chin on, which is joint locking with the
Mhm.
wrists and stuff. That was my very first day. And I remember the actual real instructor, he was teaching class off to the side. I didn't even know he was the real instructor. He's actually this guy with an afro, a white guy with an afro. And I was just like, oh, that guy's teaching class. It looks kind of interesting. Didn't think much of it, but I enjoyed my first experience, my first class. They gave me a lot of history, just a few techniques, and they gave me some handouts and free uniforms. So I was pretty excited.
And that well, you said it's something that's interesting to me. So they also had Chinat at this school, which is another area of interest for me. So you went to they had White Crane, Long Fist, Chin-Ah, Tai Chi, and it seems like it's all from very creditable sources. You're learning this from at a very early age, and this is all in a distance from where you could walk to from your house.
No, it was like a 3-4 minute drive. My parents used to drop. Well, no, I was already sorry. I already had a license, so I would just hop on the freeway and get off on the very next exit. It was really close.
Really
I
close. So
actually
that
worked right next door to there. So
you were very fortunate.
yeah, I got
That's a
lucky. Honestly, I went in the
Mhm.
yellow pages. I didn't know what was good or bad. I was finding something in my local area. I just happened to stumble upon a guy that trained in Boston, right under Master Yan, but he was originally from this area. So after he got his training in Boston, he moved back and opened a school out here.
And so you're about 15, 16 at this time.
No. I'm 18.
You're
Well,
already
17 and
18,
a half. About
17,
to be
18.
18.
Okay, so me and you are probably really close in age. Um, so tell me more about how you train there. How long did you train there, and what experiences did you have?
Yeah, so I trained there really extensively, maybe for the first 6 or 7 years, but I was still attached to the school until about 2015. So I was there a really long time. But a lot of my time there towards the end was more teaching for my instructor and being allowed to use the facility as a place to teach my own private students. But originally, when I first started, it was hard, right? I wasn't naturally talented. I didn't really play much sports in high school. Some people that might be watching this might understand if you go to school overseas in a DOD school programs as far as athletics are not very, they're not that in depth, right? Like there's not a lot of like options and opportunities. So, I didn't really jump into school sports growing up, right? Besides I did a little bit of swimming at my high school, but other than that, I didn't do high school sports. So martial arts was kind of my real first athletic endeavor that I was really focused on and really putting a lot of effort into. But there's a lot of kids that are way more talented than me. So at first it was a struggle because I saw these kids that were better than me, whether they joined after me or before me. I felt like, man, I'm just not, I felt like I was behind. But more and more as we went through it, I kept coming. I trained as hard as I could, and I showed up every day. And I started to see some of these kids were quitting. Our kids are adults, and they're not really kids, but and then some of them would come back after a couple of years, and I finally realized I'm actually better than them now. And they started realizing that, with the effort I was putting in, I was actually improving, and I could kind of myself see that with the talented students that would come and go and come back, or just the people that would keep quitting, and I would just keep showing up. And after a while, if for anything in life, if you keep showing up, doing the work, you start to see your progress. So, it was it really taught me because I was 17 and a half, 18 when I started. My entire adult life, I've been doing martial arts, and I've actually applied everything I learned through starting Kung Fu and sticking with it to, my jobs in sales and everything else I do in life. It's kind of helped me approach things in a certain way, realizing that if you stick with it, if you're dedicated, if you're consistent, that you can get good at almost anything that you put your mind to.
Well, it definitely beats natural ability, right?
Yeah.
Consistency,
Yeah.
and that's what's so intimidating in the beginning. It's whether it's jujitsu or sales, which I've been in as well, and art or making a movie or anything, just showing up and doing the work beats
Yeah.
natural ability every time. So you were there, I believe you got to the rank of what, fifth degree black sash.
Yes, sir.
hmm And
Yeah.
how long did that take you? How long did it take you to get your first black sash?
Oh man,
Once
I
again,
gotta
I
say
asked
it.
that because of the old TV show with the was it Russell Wong Black Sash? Do you remember that on the WB?
Yeah, I like that. I used to like that show. I was really into it.
Yeah, Ray J and Russell Wong going on adventures together. But anyway, um,
Yeah.
so how long did it take to get your first degree black sash?
I think it was about 6 years, if I recall correctly. So I started in 1998, and I think it was around maybe 5 years, about 2003, 2004. But I did train 6 to 7 days a week. And then towards the last few years of that 6 year span, we're actually, I was going to my instructor's class house at 6 in the morning to get additional training. So from like 6 to 8 in the morning, and then we'd come back around 3 or 4 in the evening and train until 9 at night. And this was going on like 5, 6 days a week. And then on top of that, me and some of my classmates, we had keys to the school because we used to help teach. We'd come in during off hours and train as well. And we're doing a bunch of kung fu tournaments and stuff. So we were literally training almost all the time. We're at the time we're training all the time. We're watching kung fu movies. We're hanging out together all the time. So it was like, as far as my martial arts experience or my history, it's like the time where, like, I think one of the most times where I was most invested as far as just everything about martial arts and kung fu lore and stuff. We were just watching all the old Jackie Chan movies, Bruce Lee movies, and all the Shaw brother movies and everything. And then we're training all the time. We're all hanging out together all the time as well.
Yeah, old Shaw Brothers movies. I wish that system still existed where someone just had as a filmmaker, where I could just go to a studio where they have all the sets in place, all the actors in place. I bring my script, they green light it, we just make a movie and we spit them out. They'd spit them out with 1-2 a month, But shout out to old Shaw Brothers movies. But so what was your next phase in your journey?
So right about the time I got my black belt, there's a gentleman named Mark Olson who he was originally from Bremerton, which is where I live. It's actually across the water from Seattle through the ferry by about an hour. That's where kind of naval bases and stuff are. But there's a gentleman named Mark Olson. I guess he moved back in town, and I'm in the martial arts, community. So I heard that he had moved down to California and he was training with Guru Danny Nasano. Well, he was training. When we rephrase that, he was training under Guru Ram Baliki and Willie Willie Loriano, and also Sensei Eric Paulson. In the Inasano lineage stuff, so Jeet Kune-Do, Kali, Muay Thai kickboxing, and then different forms of grappling such as catch wrestling and also Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And he had come up and I heard about him. I didn't know him per se, but he was in the town. I would actually see him at bars and just different places out and about. And we kind of wave at each other because he knew that I was in the martial arts, and, we just kind of knew of each other. So I kind of grew my interest in learning how to grapple, really kind of was starting to grow. Obviously, I was in the UFC, and, at the time, especially, or even before the time, we kind of knew, like, if you don't know how to defend yourself on the ground, are you going to be in trouble? Like, it's great to be able to defend yourself standing up, but you also have to be able to defend yourself on the ground. So, ultimately, I decided that I wanted to check out his school, and this is why I was still doing Kung Fu. But just to kind of pause the story a little bit, my Kung Fu instructor always told me and my classmates, hey, one day you guys need to go out and take a bunch of seminars and train other things and have a very open mind, because that's what he kind of did. Even though he was mainly only a kung fu guy, because he was training like in the late 70s, early 80s and beyond, he always talked about how he went to different seminars to train with other people to get exposure to other things. And he kind of early in my journey, he kind of told us this, and we're kind of laughed like, oh, we're never leaving UCFU, like, we're loyal and this and that. But looking back, and even after a couple of years after, I realized what he was trying to do. Even though he didn't really want us to ever leave, he was trying to be, he was trying to do the what's right by us, and kind of be like, look, you need to go see what else is out there. Because he did that as well. Even though Master Yang was his main instructor, under Shaolin Long Fist and White Crane and Tai Chi, he did start, he took a little bit of capoeira, he took some Tai Chi and Qigong from some other instructors, and he's kind of combined it all together. He just didn't go to the extent that we would these days, because BJJ and stuff wasn't that prevalent back then. So it just wasn't on his radar. So anyway, what happened was eventually I decided to go to Mark Olson's school, and I took a trial, and the trial was there was a class, Jeet Kune-Do Kali class, there was a submission wrestling class, and there's a Muay Thai class. And I came in the first day. Me and a friend of mine that was a classmate of mine that also did Kung Fu with me. We're the same level. We got our black belts together, a guy named Jimmy Martin. But we took the free class, our trial, and he's like, hey, you know what? Just show up the whole week. Like, I know he really wanted us to join because he knew we were a martial artist, and I think he wanted people that he knew would be dedicated. So we trained the whole week. I was already sold by day one. right? But we took the whole week of Muay Thai, Jeet Kune-Do, Kali, and grappling. And at the end of the week, I ended up joining, and my buddy couldn't really afford it at the time. He had a lot of other things going on, so that's kind of how I started in what's called the Inosanto lineage or the Bruce Lee lineage, and that's how I got exposure to all these different martial arts I do now. Including Sensei Eric Paulson, CSW, and stuff.
So, a quick side question
Yeah.
that I'm interested in now: how far in China did you get, and how effective did you feel it was for ground application? I know there's a lot of wrist locks, joint locks, even standing. A lot of styles have that, but I believe China does have some ground application as well. What's your experience with the China?
Well, so China is not a separate martial art. It's just one aspect of Kung Fu, right? So, China means to see, it means seize control. See, that's the kind of the definition of actual China. And primarily in Kung Fu, most of the joint locks are done standing. Most of them are wrist, elbow, and shoulder locks. Obviously, for a lot of the Kung Fu practitioners that also do Sui Jiao and some other more like the wrestling style of Chinese martial arts, they also apply it on the ground. I think it's very effective, both on the ground and standing. Now on the ground, it's a little bit more different, challenging because that's not the primary focus of Chinese martial arts. For the most part, most of it's standing. But obviously, wrist locks happen all the time in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or in grappling. Like some people think it's dirty, but obviously it's very practical. I would say it's only dirty if you're only doing single digits and stuff, because that's technically not allowed in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? You got to have 4 fingers or the whole hand. You can't be manipulating.
Yeah, but that's competition. That's like an IBJJF. Well, that's competition.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like when we're rolling, what are we doing here? Are we following strict IBJJF rules, or
right?
Because that's going to change up everything, But I'll attack the joints. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Especially on a collar. Someone has a collar, I'll attack, the thumb and all kind of things. But
I think Chinao is very, if you have a great instructor, Chinao is great. So in our system of White Crane Kung Fu, Chinao is very, very, there's a lot of Chinao in it, and a lot of people that are in the Kung Fu industry do know that Master Yang was very, very well knowledged in Chinao, and he actually has books and videos specifically only on Chinao because he was so good at Chinao. And I think obviously my instructor got that passed down to him. He passed it on to us. So we used to train a lot of Chinao, and I actually used a lot of it when I used to work security. Obviously, there's a time and place. You got to know when to use it, because if you use it at the wrong time, you could just get punched in the face or something. You got to be very, intelligent the way you apply anything. But Chinao is a big part of my game. Absolutely.
awesome. So then you're training. I'm sorry, what was his name again when you started your Inosanto lineage?
Sifu Mark Olson.
Mark Olson. You started training with Mark Olson, and tell me about that journey.
It was great. It was kind of like, it was almost like starting over a little bit. When you do something for a really long time, no matter how much passion you have for it, it's always nice for that to get reignited. So by training, I even though in Kung Fu we did staff, we did saber, we did chain whip, we did double saber, we did a lot of different weapons. But doing the Kali with the doing a lot with the double sticks and the stick and dagger and the double dagger and the bare hand versus all those things, got to see a different perspective, and also just training heavily in just one area of weapons versus jumping around was really fun. Jeet Kune-Do was very familiar to me, to be honest with you, because White Crane Kung Fu has a lot of trapping. So the trapping part, I kind of took to right away. Just a little bit different philosophy between Wing Chun trapping, which is what Jeet Kune-Do is based off of, and White Crane trapping, because White Crane is a little bit more circular. Jeet Kune-Do trapping or Wing Chun trapping is a little bit more direct. And of course, the grappling was like a new world. So, and that's, I forgot to mention this. When I originally went to a school, I told him I wanted to learn grappling. Sifu Mark Olson's like, well, I don't teach it separately. If you want to learn the grappling, you have to take these other arts as well. And as a martial artist, I was like, sure, no problem. Absolutely. I wanted to learn them anyway. So, that's kind of why I end up taking all these things, even though I primarily went in there for the grappling. But the grappling was definitely a new world. The first time you get smothered or, you're in a position where, people are holding you down and their body weight's on you and are trying to, obviously hurt your limb. It's almost like drowning. It was awesome. It was fun. I loved it from day one, even though he gave me a whole week to try it out. I kind of wanted to sign up on day one, but he insisted that we just keep coming for the week. But I was sold from day one. I knew this is what I wanted to do. As a martial artist, I've always been a martial artist. I want to do what works, right? I would never lie to myself. So when I knew, as we got more exposed to the UFC and everything else, I knew that I needed to learn the ground. I didn't know much on the ground at all, maybe a few things here and there, but I was very green when it came to a lot of the different things that were out there.
Now, was UFC an important part of your journey? Seeing, I mean, even for me, 1993, 94, seeing Royce Gracie. I think the first UFC I watched, I had to rent because everyone was talking. I think they were talking about UFC 2, which was Chemo versus Royce.
Right.
And I couldn't get away from this conversation. Everybody was having this conversation. So I went out and rented it and then went back, watched UFC 1, then rented them all. But it really was this like, this explosion in your brain. Did you have anything similar to that experience when watching UFC in the beginning days?
Yeah, it opened my eyes. It didn't shock me, I guess, because when I first saw UFC, I actually wasn't doing martial arts yet, right? But it definitely piqued my interest. I was always into martial arts, even just from a standpoint of a fan, right? So when I saw it, I was like, oh man, like I was sold right away. I was like, okay, you have to also learn the ground. I didn't think it was the end all be all, but I was like, you definitely, if you didn't have that aspect, then you'd be in trouble. So, it was always in the back of my mind. I think the reason why I didn't do any of the ground stuff until around 2003 is because you actually have to place to train too, right? So there's nowhere that I was teaching either Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or catch wrestling when I in 1994 in Bremerton, Washington. And it wasn't, there's Taekwondo schools, there's karate schools, there Kung Fu schools. And it was, of course, so you just go to the best of what you got. But it was always in the back of my mind. And as UFC really started to blow up, and you during the Chuck Liddell and the era and all that, I was like, as soon as I heard of a guy that moved back that trained with the legendary Guru Danny Nasano under the Bruce Lee lineage, I was obviously I knew, I was like, okay, I just want to finish, get my black belt for sure. Like I want to at least get to my black belt level before I start branching off to different things, right? So that's kind of what I did. I got my black belt, and that's when I kind of reached out to Mark Olson. But I still wanted to keep going in Kung Fu as well. But at that point, that would be a good time to start supplementing my training or adding new stuff.
And how long did you cross train with both systems?
Well, this is where it gets a little murky because I started at Mark Olson's around 2003, I believe, maybe 2004. And at the same time, I was still doing Kung Fu, like, because I got all the way up to my 5th degree. But I think once I started transitioning, I started going to Mark Olson's school more than I was going to the Kung Fu school. But I didn't leave the Kung Fu school till 2015, but the last 4 or 5 years, I was just teaching there. I wasn't really training. I was just going there and teaching certain classes for my instructor. And then also I was teaching my private lessons there. So there was a lot of just a time period of, even though I was still associated with my Kung Fu school, I would say my training really probably ended there. Maybe 2006, 2007 is when I really was not really taking classes anymore, I believe.
Is he still out there teaching?
No, he actually closed the same year I opened my school. So I opened my school, Shaolin Mixed Martial Arts, June 2018. My instructor's school closed June 2018, so the end of May. But he had actually already retired about, I would say a year before that, and actually maybe a couple of years before that, it actually passed the school down to one of my senior classmates.
Okay. And you guys, do you remain close to this day, or?
Not so much. We're still good. I haven't talked to him in a little while, but we have a good relationship. I just haven't really spoke with him too often in the last few years. He did come to my grand opening for my school. I think it was bittersweet for him a little bit, but he did come to my grand opening. So I would say we're definitely on good terms.
Yeah. Awesome.
And then Mark Olson, he also came to my grand opening as well. So.
And how long were you with Mark Olson?
So around 2003, 2004, he shut the school down in 2010. But he also had a fight gym too. So I was training at his main school. Then he also had a fight gym more for the fighters. So I was training out of both that and the fight gym. The fight gym stayed open for a few years longer, but he ended up passing on the fight gym to a few other people and moving to Arizona for a couple of years. And then he came back, but he never really got back into teaching.
So while you were with Mark Olson, um, what were do you have any interesting stories? What happened along the way? How'd you grow as a martial artist?
Well, let's
When
see.
they
Well,
when
first
you
off,
ask
Mark
that
Olson was
question,
a
they cock their head back like they're thinking of something. They got some stories they don't want to tell you.
well, Mark Olson, first off, he was a phenomenal martial artist, and I think he really cared about his students. Um, I'm trying to think. It's good. I haven't thought about it for a second here, really. He was very passionate, that's for sure. I remember I'll give some stories. I'll jump around a little bit, but I did a kickboxing match for him one time. He's an even keel kind of quiet guy, but he's very passionate, and he really cares. And I remember I jumped in the ring, and the fight's about to start, and then he just looks at me and he starts talking about how they want to eat my heart, and he just starts, he starts like getting you pumped up in a way that you're just like, it throws you off because he's always kind of quiet, even though he's very passionate about his martial arts. But he just, I don't know. I would say my kung fu instructor is probably the best teacher I ever had as far as being able to break things down and explain it. Mark Olson was very definitely a technician. So was my original instructor, maybe even more so. But the information was a little bit different. One was kung fu, and one was more a little bit modern day stuff. That's probably more up to speed with the times, right? Mark Olson was just always just man, he was just always very all about fighting, right? So sometimes you're doing a demo with him, or you're doing a demonstration, or he's trying to show the class, and he's always just he always wants you to make sure that you're giving 110%. He always taught really fast, which is good and bad. So this is where maybe we had some difference in opinion. He always felt like you always train and learn fast because that's how fighting is. And I kind of grew up with my kung fu instructor in a way of, well, like, yes, fights are fast and everything's, you got to be able to comprehend things at a very high level with little time. But when you're learning something, you got to do things very slow, repeat it a bunch of times, and then accelerate it. And I think that's where sometimes he struggled with having a lot of students, because he would teach so fast and so much information was dumped on you all at once. That was really hard to, for a lot of people to stick with it, because they just felt like they were just not, they were not capable. They weren't the right student. This wasn't built for them. So that was always an interesting experience with him. I don't know. He just, I don't have an exact story per se right now, but I would just say he was very passionate.
What do you think the
And he
main thing
didn't
you learned
know,
in that
he knew
time
one
was?
way.
What do you
What's
think the
that?
main thing you learned in that time period was?
I mean, I learned a bunch from him as far as like martial art. He taught me so much. Like my foundation of doing Jeet Kune-Do, Kali, Muay Thai, kickboxing, and grappling comes from him. So much so that when I went to my next instructor, Ron Bleaky, who was his instructor, believe it or not, right, from California, I kind of went to him because Mark Olson closed his school in 2010, and I wasn't done. Even though I got a black belt under Mark Olson, I wanted, the rest of what he had, and he was no longer available. So I started flying down to California and training with Guru Ron Bleaky, who was Mark Olson's instructor. And I already met him a few times because he came up and did seminars, and also Sensei Eric Paulson's classmate, right? But when I got there, I realized that like the amount of knowledge I had allowed me to excel really fast under Guru Ram Bleaky, because Mark Olson had taught me so well. So I really appreciate the fact that he was a very himself. I know he was a very dedicated student, because I heard it from Guru Ron before I even started training directly under Guru Ron, that Mark Olson trained every day, all the time. He took all the notes. He was just so driven, and he kind of shared that and bled that to us, I would say. So I would say the biggest thing Mark gave to me is just the information, and just a good role model of how to train and how to be really good at martial arts. Right, just his representation of how he did it and the way I heard from his classmates and his instructors really motivated me to kind of do the same thing as him.
Are you still training with the Guru Ron?
Yes, yeah. I train. Actually, I'm going to go to Mars conference in Colorado in on Thursday. Well, Thursday I fly out there. I'm helping teach a women's like self-defense conference with Guru Larry St. Clair, who's a senior classmate of mine under Ron Bleaky. And then that leads right into Mars conference in Grand Junction in Colorado.
Okay. And was Ron Bleaky the connection to training with Eric Paulson?
Not exactly. So Mark Olson actually trained under both Eric Paulson and Ron Bleaky. So I was already a lot of things we learned from Mark Olson was from Eric Paulson, right? Like the shoot combo flows and a lot of the even though Ron Bleaky is also a shoot wrestler under Yori Nakamura, just like Sensei Eric Paulson. But as we all know, when it comes to grappling, Eric Paulson was the main guy in Asano lineage. That's what he's known for. So I already had his influence right from Mark Olson, and then while I was training with Guru Ron, I decided I wanted to fly out to also train with Sensei Eric Paulson in Fullerton, California.
And how long have you been training with Eric Paulson?
Um, I joined the association or the in 2019 or 2000. I think I joined the association 2019 or 2020 is when I actually joined. So that's when I became an affiliate. But I went down to a CSW conference in, I think it was 2018 is the first time I went down there. But ever since now I go down there 3-4 times a year, right? In the last few years, I even went to Atlanta. But I go to all the CDB camps, and so I see Sensei Eric maybe 3-4 times a year. So I kind of like once I decided that was the route I was going, I started seeing him all the time. Initially, when I joined, I had to do a lot of testing under Zoom because of the pandemic. But I've been seeing him as much as I can.
Is that where your official BJJ started, or did you start like doing official like gi BJJ before then?
I started doing gi BJJ maybe around 2013 under Professor George Hassan, who's under Marcelo Alonso, who's
Mhm.
really big in the Northwest.
Marcelo Alonso has that Seattle area on lock, boy. I
Yeah,
tell you,
he does.
if like my friends out there, they're brown belts, black belts under Marcelo, whether they have a school or not. Yeah, Marcelo's the man out there, definitely.
He is. Yeah, he definitely has this area. He has a lot of schools and affiliates underneath him in definitely in Washington.
And how to what belt did you get under Marcelo?
I got all the way up to purple belt under Marcelo, or more George Hassan. Professor George Hassan is really because he's a black belt under Marcelo Alonso. He
Mhm.
also teaches like the police academy and stuff. He's very big up here in Washington. And then of course I got my brown belt, as you know, under Sensei Eric Paulson.
So, are you doing majority of your BJJ or catch wrestling, your grappling, I should say, under in the CSW camp now, or
No,
are you still
I go to a
still getting a lot
school.
of places?
I still go to a school up here because the way my schedule works, I go to a school under Professor Esmo. He has a school that has morning classes. As you know, I have a school, so I can't go to evening classes. So a lot of schools are not available to me. I've been training under this gentleman named Esmo, who's actually a black belt under George Hassan, for primarily under him for the last few years, even before he left George Hassan, even before. No, he was a black belt the whole time I've been training with him extensively. But when I'm not, I train there about 5-6 days a week, and then of course I train down, and then I fly down to see Sensei Eric every 2 or 3, 4 months and train.
And so you're getting a pretty good eclectic blend of grappling
Yes.
because you're also getting catch wrestling stuff and you know who knows what else.
Yeah.
How's your grappling journey been?
Initially it was a little slow because, within this lineage, in the beginning, because I was doing Jeet Kune-Do, Kali, Muay Thai kickboxing, other variations of kickboxing. I was only generally grappling 2, 3 times a week. But in the last few years, especially, I've been training grappling 5, 6 days a week in the morning, whether it's more CSW, catch wrestling stuff, or, BJJ stuff. So in the last few years, I've been accelerating a lot. I've also been down to Costa Rica a few times at Hero Academy training. I trained, I went to a Jake Shields camp. I went to a David Avalon camp. I've
You're going to
trained in
get that
Thailand.
knowledge. You're going to get
Yeah,
that knowledge, huh?
yeah. I mean, I've been traveling around a
Hmm.
lot just to just experience and get things from different people. That's kind of what I've been doing ever since, especially since 2015. I've been traveling. I would say I'm on a plane maybe every month and a half, 2 months, somewhere, whether it's Thailand,
It's
Mexico,
awesome.
Costa Rica, different parts of the United States.
Now, I would imagine that what allows you to do that in large part is your schedule and the success of your academy that you have. Take me back to your decision to open your own school and through that journey as well.
Yeah, so the I've always wanted to open the school, but I've always been hesitant because, as most of us know, most martial arts school owners don't make a lot of money. Now that's changed a lot in the last few years, of course. But originally, like if you grew up in our era, a lot of our
It was a
instructors were,
backyard. It was like a backyard garage thing, in our era, for
yeah.
mostly,
So
unless
they're
you were teaching Taekwondo.
either training people out of their garage or their backyard, or during the time they weren't working, right?
Mhm.
So even though I always wanted to do it, I was like, I don't want to do it if I have to have a main job and then just teach as a hobby. Right. That was my conflict with doing it. It's like I've known I've wanted a martial arts school since maybe 2002, right? Way in just 3, 4 years into doing martial arts. I always knew I wanted one. But what's really changed is in 2015, there's a school up here in Seattle named MKG Seattle. It's ran under Guru Andy Wilson, who's under Guru Rick Fay, if you understand the MKG in the Asano lineage. I started traveling out there to train originally around 2013 or 14 because Mark Olson had closed. A few other people that I trained under had closed as well. So I was commuting like an hour and a half to train for a couple hours, a couple times a week. And then he had an opening for an enrollment director slash assistant operations at his school. And he has a school that was 24,000 square feet, had over like 500 students. So he had a very big school. So I got that job and I learned how to run a school, a big school, because I had a lot of responsibilities like making phone calls, signing people up, helping with scheduling, advertising, the work. So pretty much the ins and outs of learning how to run a martial arts school. So from that experience there, and I worked there for about a couple of years. After I didn't work there any longer, that's when I knew I was going to open a school, and that's kind of why I decided to open a school. And then I opened my school June of 2018. When I first opened, I already had about 20 private students, so they all kind of came in. And then I just, did some advertising on Facebook a little bit and stuff. And my school opened June 2nd, 2018.
And what's it been like so far? It's all smooth sailing, no ups and downs at all, I'm sure, right?
I've been pretty lucky. I would say I've only been pretty lucky because the way I prepared myself working for that particular, MKG Seattle for 2 years. And during the time I worked for MKG Seattle, they sent me to a couple masterminds. I went to a mastermind down at Freestyle Academy down in Florida, Miami, Florida, I think it is, our Florida area, with not David Avalon, his brother, Marcus Avalon, I think his name is. And then, they kind of showed me a lot of things. So I got a lot of training, even not only from that previous experience at teaching, working at MKG Seattle, but the seminars he sent me to. So when I opened my school, I kind of knew a lot of things to do and a lot of things not to do. And then a few months into having my school open, I joined a combat business mastermind who's ran by Alan Belcher, Paul Jaime, and then Amy Majors. And that's really that group right there, being part of that mastermind, which I'm still part of, has really helped me excel and really launch my business to be where it is today.
So you recommend, because I get approached having a young school. I've been open for a little bit over a year. Um, I get approached, through IM or whatnot, through a lot of these groups,
Sure.
consultants or masterminds. But you really recommend Alan Belcher's?
Absolutely. Now, Alan Belcher's kind of stepped aside a little bit because he's, he jumped back into fighting. He's doing the bare knuckle fighting stuff, but absolutely, like they've taught me so much. They're great people. I'm still with them to this day. Obviously, it's not necessarily cheap to be part of the mastermind, but people always ask me, well, is it worth it? I'm like, if it wasn't worth it, why would I still be here? I've been there. I've been in this group since October of 2018. I actually joined with my last dollar. Me and my wife were at this event. We got a free trip to the event. It's the mastermind. And, there's all sorts of great speakers. There's Ben Askren. There's a bunch of people. I can't remember half their names at this point. But I knew by the end of the seminar that if I joined this mastermind, that I was going to be successful. So I literally spent my last dollar to join it. And by a few weeks later, I made more than I ever made in a month. And then it kept just jumping up. So absolutely. It's like, people always ask me, is it a gimmick, this and that? I'm like, I wouldn't be a part of it if it was. I'm not going to pay money to a mastermind group that's not building me success. And obviously, whatever I have to pay them, my success has to outweigh that. Right.
Yeah.
So it's been great. I'm still part of the group now. We have Zoom calls every week, and then we also have meetups once every few months. It's great. I
So
recommend it absolutely.
do you have any advice for someone like myself out there who's got a young school? What would be your advice? I can tell you, like from my personal experience, like you said, you did Facebook boosted ads. I've done all that stuff. In the beginning, it was working great.
Yeah,
As you go on, you get diminishing results, right? So
sure.
at this point, what I'm facing is getting people in the door is a lot harder now than it was in the beginning. Converting a lead into an actual free trial. Do you have any advice in that?
Yeah. So the problem is, you're right, absolutely right. You're right. The social media world or the internet advertising world keeps changing every couple of months. And that's the problem, right? Back in the day, Facebook, it was a wild, wild west. You just boost something and you get everybody. You do a Facebook Live, you got everybody. Now it's changed. So my biggest advice really is find a group, whether it's the one I'm part of or a different group that works for you. Join a mastermind. The reason why you want to join the mastermind also is because you might be very, very smart, but you're one person. When you have a
Mhm.
whole collective of people, say 40, 50, 60, 70 school owners working together, and also the people that run the mastermind, the nice thing is you don't have to come up with all the solutions yourself. There's certain areas of the business that maybe you don't excel at that somebody else does. And as a collective, they figure out the answers and they present them during meetings. So when Facebook rules change, when all these things happen, you don't have to be individually figure out what's wrong or how to do it. Somebody else figures it out, part of the group, and they give you the answer. So I'll say the first thing to do is join a mastermind. If you join the right mastermind, which is obviously the most important part, then listen to everything they tell you to do, right? If you don't know how to bake a cake, you would follow every single step of the recipe to make sure the cake's okay, comes out correctly. The problem with a lot of people is they join these groups and they say they need help and they'll listen to everything. And as soon as they hear something they don't want to do, they decide, oh, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to do everything but that. It doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense. Like, if you're going to bake a cake, you didn't know how to, you would not skip one ingredient. You do exactly the way they tell you to. And then once you know how to do that correctly, then you could change the recipe, right? Once you know how to be successful, yeah, then you can start adding different things and changing things. So you understand how to be successful. And that's really my biggest thing. I would say that's the biggest thing. If you didn't want to go that route, I would say, without getting in elaborate detail, you need to learn how to take down payments when people first sign up. If you take down payments every time you sign someone up, then you're gonna have a lot of free cash flow. That's gonna allow you to get a real website, right? Once you have the money, get an actual website by a martial arts website company, and also getting a high professional CRM system, for example, Spark. With
Yeah.
those, if you have those things, I promise you're going to do really well.
Okay. That's actually really good practical advice. And your school's doing pretty well at the moment, I believe.
Yeah, we have I would say right now about 325 students. And we had our best month ever actually in March. We did 86 grand.
Yeah, because you must have really because I believe when I met you last year in August, you was telling me about 200 students. Maybe
No,
maybe
I
you
think
were.
at the time I had more than that, but
Did
yeah,
you?
I mean, I was doing good, decent.
That's still pretty good, man.
Yeah,
That's still pretty good. Congratulations.
thank you.
And the great thing about that is it does open doors for you to train and do other things and hire people that can teach classes while you're gone. If you don't want to be on the mat as much, you want to, pursue other ventures. Um, which takes me to, I believe, something we talked about when I met you. You were dabbling in the world of stunting for film, being a
Yeah, I mean,
stuntman.
I actually just stumbled upon it. It wasn't, it was never necessarily a goal of mine whatsoever. Because I'm not great at flips and that kind of thing, believe it or not, right? But I would believe in the early around June or so, my instructor Ron Baliki, who I'll give you a little backstory on him. He's actually married to Bruce Lee's goddaughter, Danny Insano's daughter, Diana Lee Insano, who's actually in the Mandalorian and stuff. But
Mhm.
he's in the stunt. He's been in the stunt world for a while. I think he did Power Rangers way back in the day, Three Ninjas, and a bunch of other stuff. Well, he was doing the fight choreography for a movie with Michael Jai White, and because he's my instructor and they need a certain look, he called me up in early June and said, "Hey, we're looking for some gangsters in this movie. You're supposed to kind of have like a Caribbean look or Islander look type thing, more as far as like a Virgin Island Islander look." So he's like, "Are you interested?" I was like, "Sure, why not?" So he had me give him a headshot. I sent it. They sent it, and then they came back and said that I had the right look for it. So I'd never done the movies before, never done any stunt work. But he got me into the movie because obviously I have martial arts background and stuff, and he's doing the fight choreography. And that's kind of how that happened, to be honest with you. I was fortunate to be in a movie in it was at St. Kitts Nexus in the Caribbean with Michael Jai White. It was pretty cool. Good experience.
And what was the name of that movie? And is it out yet?
It's not out yet, but it's called The Island.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it should be coming out really soon here. You go on IMDb and look it up with Michael J. White, but it's called The Island. I think he's a cop who has a brother. Uh, don't quote me on this exactly, but his brother gets killed, and he's in where they're from in the Caribbean, and so he comes back home because he's a cop in, I believe, in the United States to look to see what happened to his brother, and he's originally from those islands.
And do you have a fight scene with him, or
Yeah, it's brief. So there's, I have a little bit of a scene.
you throw a punch and he kicks you out the frame?
So something like that. Yeah, it was supposed to be a little bit longer, but just with time and logistics of things, it got a little bit shortened up. But I think I have like in this particular, I think it's like a bar club scene. I have a couple scenes in there.
And is that something you're looking at pursuing more of?
My instructor Ron, he was like, "Hey, you did a good job." So, he's like, "Go get your SAG card, and I'll get you some more work." So, if it comes up, great. I'm not necessarily pursuing it, but obviously, it's a great opportunity, and it's one thing I guess off my bucket list, right? Everybody kind of always wanted to maybe be in a movie somewhere, right? So,
Yeah, I mean, look at me. I made one, Lion Killer. It's like I love movies so much. So I'm going to make one,
there
which
you go.
is a whole podcast unto itself, making an independent feature. But um, this seems like a really good experience. I think you should pursue it, man. That'd be pretty cool, man.
Yeah, I'm pretty busy between I have my wife and three kids and then my
Yeah.
school, and I travel, as you probably know, I travel so much to train. On top of the training trips, I also have the mastermind trips. I
Hmm.
mean, I was just at Sensei Eric's a couple weeks ago now.
Hmm.
Has it
Yeah.
even been a couple weeks, the World Conference? And then I got to leave to go to Colorado on Thursday, and I'm going to be gone for almost 2 weeks. And then I'm going to France for Mars Europe in June. I'll be back at Sensei Eric's in August, but I'll probably have some things in between there. So I'm always, I got a lot of things going on. So we'll see.
He's too busy for the movies, everybody. That's a good position to be in.
Well, it's good money, but it's work. People
Oh,
people are
look who you're
laughing at
talking
me
to.
because I'll sit on the beach and stuff, but I'm not used to not being my own boss. Working 12-hour shifts and having people tell you what to do is just different from my where my life is now. So it's a little bit of a difference.
Oh, dude, while on set, like even making Lion Killer or other things I've worked on, having friends come down and they want to work for a day, they very seldom make it the whole day. You know, if I said, hey, go out and mow grass for 12 hours, they could handle that, even the hot Houston weather. But being on set and the nature of a film, um, it's hard, grueling work, and you got to really be passionate about it. So, but I definitely think it would be cool to, seeing a few more stunning, stuntman roles. Maybe
Yeah.
take a high fall off a building on fire or something, man.
No, maybe I need to go to stunt school. So I walked in that experience like, oh great, what am I gonna do? What am I supposed to be doing? I've never done any stunts, right?
Hmm.
So at least now I kind of know what I'm getting myself into. So
Hmm.
maybe I'll buy some gear, like some gaiters and stuff, and maybe take a few classes. But now at least I can kind of prepare myself before I do it next time. Versus this time, I just kind of just walked into it. So
Now you've done a lot. Um, and how old are you?
I'm 42.
So you're 42 years old. You've done a lot already. Do you have any more aspirations? Any more things you want to accomplish?
I mean, of course, I don't, I honestly I don't have exactly mapped out right now. Right now I mean, this is more on a smaller scale, but I need to get a bigger location for my school. My lease ends in August, so I gotta get a bigger location for my school. I'm possibly thinking about opening another branch in the Bonnie Lake area. I have a good uh he was my at one point, he was my instructor. He's my friend. He's under in Shaolin. His name is Rob Thornton. He's actually under Sensei Eric. Uh, he wants to open a school underneath me. So before that, I had no interest in that because opening multiple locations is actually very difficult. But he's very highly skilled, so I might open another location. And then most of my other stuff is not necessarily martial arts related. It's just other revenue streams, like real estate and trying to make sure that, my family is taken care of. And if we have another pandemic, I'm not worried about where my income's going to come from because I
Mhm.
only have a martial arts school. And then, I probably will get my SAG card and do a little bit of more stunt work. Just, the first experience was a little nerve wracking. I don't, and so I definitely want to do it a couple more times to see if it's something I really like or not. Right now, I'm kind of like on the fence about it because it was
Mhm.
kind of nerve wracking. I wasn't necessarily prepared, fortunately it worked out. So I want to give it a few more tries to kind of see whether I enjoy it or if it's just not for me. It was a great experience. So that's it for now, I guess, and keep traveling and training in different parts of the world. And then other than that, just helping my community, helping kids that are getting bullied and stuff. But that's always a kind of an ongoing thing. And getting my kids, they're slowly navigating themselves through learning martial arts and getting them to work for the school and eventually taking over the school and kind of seeing where they want to go as well.
Now, this is a question I ask everybody. What are the lessons you've learned? Like you said, your entire adult life spent in the martial arts. What are the lessons you've learned that you would like to pass on?
What I've learned is, whether even if it's not martial arts, I've talked to people that say are great at being a musician or some other field. If you have one thing that you're really, really that you excel at, regardless of whether it's when you're 18 or even later in life or a little bit younger, take the lessons you learn from that and apply it to every part of the rest of your life, and you'll be successful. Once you get really great at one part of your life, right? You had to put in all the work to get there. And all those lessons you learn, they do directly translate to other fields. It's just understanding how to pull out the right, information out of there. And I think that's what I've used to to get better at other parts of my life and also have the confidence, right? When you get really good at something, you have confidence in that one area. But you should be able to translate that and have confidence in other areas and know that if you put in the same kind of work, that you a lot of times will get the same kind of result. So just, believe in yourself and just realize that if you're really great at something, don't limit yourself to that one field, right? Or also just use what you're really good at to barter with other people to get things done in other fields. Like I can't build anything really, right? So when I was struggling when I would get a new location for my school of how we were going to paint it, tear down walls, put in the mats, put up the mirrors. But I just learned that the one thing that you're really exceptional at, you could trade with other people in different ways to get them to help you with what they're good at. And I think that's a great lesson in life. You can't learn everything, right? We only have so many hours in a day. So understanding, your niche and your zone and learning how to apply that to other places or using that to get better at other zones in life is really important.
That's good advice. And I want to thank you for your time, man. And hopefully we'll catch up at one of the CSW events soon. And when I'm out in Washington, hopefully I can stop by and do a little training with you.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure I'll see you sooner rather than later. But if you have anything you need from me, just definitely let me know. Thank you for the opportunity.
Same here, brother. See you soon.
All right. Thanks.
And that was my conversation with a very interesting Victor Young, all the way from Bremerton, Washington. If you're ever in the Pacific Northwest and you want to hook up with him, his links are in the description. You can also follow my new graphic novel, The Gentleman's Guild. Yes, I'm making a graphic novel. It's called The Gentleman's Guild with artist Ebi Canales. You can sign up for the mailing list now. The link for that is also in the description. And don't forget to watch Lion Killer, my debut feature film. That's right, I made a movie. It's called Lion Killer. It stars Regina Ting-Chen, who's currently on season 4 of Stranger Things. You can watch it at Amazon Prime, Tubi TV, Freevee, the Roku channel, or you can pop on over to the YouTube channel called V Movies. And thanks for watching this episode of FURYCAST. Well, that's it for today's show. Make sure you like this video, comment down below, or simply leave me a pound FURYCAST. Let me know you're out there. You can also subscribe to the channel, and yes, smash that bell for notifications. Until next time, peace.